And also I'd like to just acknowledge that I am coming to you today from Silk Territory, which includes Kelowna, BC. It's also where the Alternator is located and where we present our work. And we are very thankful for that. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Alternator or the Alternator Chats, we are an artist-run center located in Kelowna, British Columbia. We have been around for about 30 years, and we support emerging artists in various stages of their careers and from different disciplines. Our professional programming generally is very experimental in nature. As well, you can find out more at our website, alternatorcenter.com. So this Alternator chat series is something that really came up as a way to do outreach for our members during COVID, when the gallery wasn't quite as accessible in the spring months. And now through this winter series, a way to kind of address some of the questions that we've been hearing from folks and from the Alternator community, and really looking at some of the more practical things like art-life balance, looking at doing your taxes as artists, grant writing, so on and so forth. And a lot of the questions that we get are around things like, what should I get paid as an artist? Questions around appropriation, questions around all sorts of stuff, where we generally are very thankful to be able to pass people over to the Carfac website and to the fee schedule and to many of the other resources that they have. So I'm actually really surprised by the number of artists that come into the gallery and maybe who have just either come out of school or who are rediscovering their practice and they have not heard of Carfac before. So this today is going to provide an overview of Carfac, what it is, and we are very thankful to have April Brinsky, who's the Executive Director of Carfac Canada, joining us today. So thank you, April. I'm going to leave it to you to provide a brief introduction and to take over. And if anyone does have any questions, please put them in the chat window and we will address them at the end and then have a bit of time for questions as well. All right, thanks, April. Oh,
yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Hi, everybody. Thanks very much. Yeah, so I'm April Brinsky. I'm the National Executive Director of Carfac, and just so you know where I am, I'm based in Burnaby on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam nations. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Carfac. So Carfac is a national association of professional visual and media artists, and we advocate for artists' rights and negotiate better payment for artists' work. And so we have about over 4,000 members and 10 offices across Canada. And Carfac members receive services from our national staff, who are currently based out here in the Vancouver area, Winnipeg, Ottawa, and St. John's, as well as additional programs and services from our provincial offices like Carfac BC, which is based in Vancouver. Our board members are artists who live from coast to coast to coast. And I guess before I tell you a little bit more about Carfac, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, just because I think it's important to know like how I got involved or why I got involved. And basically, I guess it sort of started when I was studying art and art history in university. I was really looking for a lot of practical career information and advice that you often don't get in art school. So, you know, I wanted to know like tips for writing a bio or an artist statement. I had questions about copyright, what I could and couldn't do, how to document my work, all these sorts of things. And where I was anyway, we weren't really getting that kind of information in school. And so some of my professors and some of my colleagues in class told me about Carfac. And so I regularly attended workshops and information sessions. And then after I graduated, I also found that my community changed quite a bit. You know, when you're a student, you get kind of in that student bubble. You're around other art students. You're getting weekly crits. You know, then that kind of, well, for some people, I suppose maybe that continues like immediately once you finish. But for me, I was like, okay, I don't have a studio space anymore. Like, what am I going to do? And so I decided that I was going to become a member, and not long after, there was a local conference that I decided to attend just to meet some other members and find out some more about the organization. And by the end of it, I was on the board of the provincial association at that time. And then I did learn a lot more about the sort of advocacy and labor related work that we do that way. And a few years later, after I'd moved to Ottawa, the job came open, and 16 years later, here I am. So not where I thought I would be, but it's very, very rewarding work for sure. So as I said, like, oh, well, we're an association, members across the country. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the services. So as I mentioned, like, we provide a lot of professional development services for artists. We offer information through newsletters, email updates, social media, and on our website. We have information sheets and publications on lots of different topics like copyright and doing your taxes, or even planning your estate as an artist, exporting your work, and much more. We're connected with lawyers and accountants that really understand artistic practices in many cities across the country, and we work with clinics that offer free or discounted legal advice to artists as well. So the one that we're most closely connected to out here on the West Coast is the Pacific Legal Education and Outreach Clinic, which is based in Vancouver, but they do provide services on the West Coast generally. So if you're looking for some advice, they're a really great resource. We organize workshops, webinars, yearly conferences. Well, except for last year and this year, I guess it's a little bit different. We've been doing webinars instead, but normally we gather in a different part of the country every year. Last year we were supposed to be in Newfoundland. But we have had a couple of conferences in Vancouver over the last few years. One in 2013, we talked about education and mentorship and the importance of that through your career trajectory. And the last one, actually the last conference that we were able to host was in 2019 in Vancouver, and that focused on Indigenous protocols related to intellectual property. We had a presentation about blockchain. We had another panel about alternative labor models for artists, both in Canada and abroad. And so it's the sort of kind of things that we talk about regularly when we meet with our members. What else? Members receive discounts and benefits, including free entry to many museums across Canada and other countries. Additionally, our staff can also advise you on your rights as an artist. We are not lawyers. We're not accountants. We can provide information. We can match you up to different resources as well. Yeah, I guess a lot of people do contact us because they're not always sure where to go for questions about legal issues or taxes or a variety of different things, but they know that an organization of artists is a good place to start, and we understand your issues. Yeah, and then additionally, our local or provincial chapters also provide different services. So in BC, Carfac offers discounts with various museums and other suppliers. They also have members have access to group medical plan. They often host workshops. They publish e-newsletters, and they also have an ebook for emerging artists. And they're working on some other projects right now that are pretty exciting too. So A lot of what we do has to do with improving working conditions and payments for artists. And people may tell you that you get good exposure when they use your work for free, but your work has value, and donating your work or your time rarely pays off for you as an artist, as I'm sure you all know. And so copyright laws provide artists with the right to be paid for exhibitions and reproductions of your work. And most public funders require that museums and galleries pay artist fees according to our guidelines if the work is not available for sale. It's always helpful for us to hear from artists and presenters that are about presenters that aren't offering payment or adequate terms in their relationships with artists. For example, we know that in BC and that many small local and regional arts councils don't always pay, and we are aiming to do some advocacy on that. But it's helpful for us to know as much as possible as these things kind of develop. If your work is exhibited in a public gallery where the work is not for sale, you should be paid a royalty. And if your work is reproduced in a book or on a website, you should receive a royalty. If you're asked to speak on a panel or assist in the installation of your art, you should really be paid a fee for those services as well. And so since 1968, we've been making recommendations on what artists should be paid for their copyright and services, often referred to as artist fees or Carfax fees. And we make those available in our minimum recommended fee schedule, and the address is on the screen there. And I think it's important to know that some people think that the fee schedule has always been there, or that museums have always paid artists for exhibitions, but that's not the case. It really did start with the work and dedication of countless artists over the years. And it's actually our founding principle that led to the creation of the fee schedule. So what do those fees look like? Well, they do change every year, but the royalties and fees that we recommend are minimum guidelines, and they increase, as I said, every year, usually by 2%. The basis of our fee schedule is the solo exhibition royalty, and rates do vary according to the museum budget. Other factors may be taken into consideration to calculate different rates, like group exhibitions. We also have rates for performances, for film festivals, for web use, all kinds of different reproductions, artist talks, lectures, and much more. So this is just a very small snapshot of what the fee schedule looks like. We also recently put out new guidelines for paying artists during the pandemic, and I'm sure that will continue to evolve, especially as in different parts of the country, things are in various stages of being open or closed. Hopefully not for too much longer, but anyway, our fee schedule is available online, and it serves as the industry standard for paying artists. And we also have a collective agreement with the National Gallery of Canada. We've had this in place since 2015. The agreement includes minimum payments that artists will receive for the exhibition and reproduction of their work, as well as other services that are provided by artists to the gallery. And our fee schedule is a little bit different. Like, it's more flexible and open to negotiation with presenters, but this agreement with the National Gallery is actually binding. And that means that they can never pay artists less than what we negotiated with them. We're also looking to serve notice to bargain to more federal institutions, but this was a really big one. I think it's the first scale collective agreement for visual artists in the world, actually. So it's a really important precedent. And it wasn't easy to achieve. There was fierce opposition, and after 10 years of meetings and going to court, we do finally have this agreement, and they do pay artists significantly more than what they did before. So in addition to regulating working relationships, we also work on several other campaigns. And this is one of the big ones that we've been working on for several years now, and that's to bring the artist resale right to Canada. So the resale right, it entitles visual artists to receive a royalty payment each time your work is resold publicly through an auction house or a commercial gallery, and we recommend that artists receive 5% on the sales of their work in the secondary market. And the resale rate allows artists to share on the ongoing profits that are being made on your work. You know, it's difficult to earn a living as an artist, and writers and composers get paid from ongoing uses of their work whenever a book is reprinted or a song is played on the radio or purchased online. And so this is similar in that it's a royalty that's based on subsequent commercial sales of an artwork. And it is important to know that it's a royalty, it's not a tax, it's an economic right for artists, which needs to be included in legislation. But the great thing is that it doesn't actually cost the government anything. We just need help getting it in law. We don't currently have it in Canada yet, but that is our hope that it will be coming soon. And I guess the reason that we feel that it's so important is the full value of an artwork often isn't realized on that first sale. It's common for visual art to grow in value over time as an artist's reputation grows. And this famous print by Knoyuak Ashevak sold for $24 back in I think it was the 60s. And several editions of it have been sold at auction. And just a few years ago, it was resold for almost $186,000. And so that artist didn't receive anything for that sale. But if Canada did have a resale rate, she could have received over $9,000 in royalties, which is significantly more than the $24 she made in the first place. So once established in Canada, artists would be able to benefit from reciprocal agreements with other countries where the resale right exists. So France has had a law since 1920, and since then over 90 countries around the world have legislated it, including the European Union, all of its member states, and Australia, and many others. And in Canada, we had a bill presented in 2013, and it was discussed in the 2018 review of the Copyright Act. And we continue to advocate for it with members of Parliament and stakeholders. And we do have a full proposal on our website. We're looking to update it a little bit this year, and hopefully to get another bill presented shortly after an election called, which who knows, could be any day now. There we go. So with all of these activities, Carfac works really closely with Copyright Visual Arts, which was formerly known as CARC, and they were founded in 1990 to help artists manage their copyright, and it's now co-owned by RAB under this new name, Copyright Visual Arts, le droit d'auteur en visuel. And the collective provides services to their affiliated members, including the negotiation and licensing of copyright use. So Carfac recommends rates that artists should be paid in our fee schedule, but they actually negotiate on your behalf as an individual artist. And artists who join Carfac are not automatic members of Copyright Visual Arts. Artists would have to join by legally assigning their copyright to the collective, and they would manage it as you direct them to. It's free to join, and they typically negotiate higher royalties than what we recommend in our fee schedule. So they charge the administrative fee to the user rather than the artist. So it's a really good service if that's something that you're interested in. What else? Well, I mean, these are some of the advocacy work that we do on an ongoing basis on behalf of all artists. We regularly submit briefs to the government asking for better policies on issues that really matter to artists, like copyright and taxation, as I said. So last fall, we offered a webinar on various tax issues, and we'll likely be doing something soon specifically to address the 2020 tax season. We're hoping to do that probably early in the spring. I should say that the pandemic has really profoundly affected artists in Canada. As you all know, since March, we've been providing resources on our website related to COVID. And in April, we called on the government to expand the CERB eligibility criteria to make it more accessible for more artists. And we were part of a working group that called on the government to make CERB eligibility be based on gross income rather than net. You've probably heard about that this last week. That was really in response to some letters that were sent out in December asking basically thousands of artists to repay benefits based on a lack of clarity from the government about who was eligible. And so they listened to us. And this week, they made the change that we were asking for, which I think will make a huge difference to a lot of people across the country. In July, we joined a coalition that is calling for guaranteed basic income, or UBI. We hosted a webinar on that in September, and we recommended it in the federal budget consultations last fall, and it's something that we're continuing to push for. And I think it's important to know that none of this just happens. There really is power in numbers, and we're really proud of some of the work, especially that we've been able to do in the last year. We know that CERB has been a lifeline for many artists. You can never predict what big crises or issues are just around the corner, but we are regularly monitoring and responding to things as they happen according to our abilities. And so we really do appreciate the feedback and support of artists to help us do that, to figure out what's most important to you. So what else? We're working on some other big projects right now. Notably, we're working on a blockchain platform for visual art that is in development, and we'll probably be hosting a webinar on that in a couple of months. And some new resources on Indigenous protocols for visual art and cultural expressions. Information will be coming out about both of these things over the next couple of months. Carfac BC is working on a guide to best practices for working in the visual arts sector, which is similar to something that's been developed in other provinces. I think they're still in the early stages of that, but it sounds like a really exciting project. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe this is a good time to stop for questions. Oh, before I do, maybe though, so that's our website, carfac.ca, our phone number. We currently don't have anybody in the office, and I've heard that sometimes our mailbox is getting pretty full. So actually the best way to reach me and my colleagues is probably by email through the website. But we do provide a lot of information on all of these things also in our social media as well.
Thanks, April.
Yeah, happy to answer any.
Yeah, and we have a few different questions. I'll just, for any of the people who joined us a bit late, if you do have any questions or specific questions about Carfac or any of the services that they have for artists, or if you have specific questions, put them into the chat window and we will get to them. And so we have a few here, some comments and some questions. So I think I'll just start with some of the first comment that we have here, and you can kind of just respond to that, and we'll go down the list. So did I get that correctly? So I think just talking about fees for artists. So one person mentioning that if they exhibit their work, they shall get paid rather than them paying the gallery to show their work. So City of Toronto galleries charge $1,000 for an exhibition plus insurance. So if someone do you have any advice for that person?
So if you're exhibiting your work in a public gallery where the work isn't for sale, legally they are supposed to be paying you. We know that some don't, especially small startups. Many are working their way up to paying. But most, I mean, especially anybody that gets public funding, like from the Canada Council or the BC Arts Council or like the City of Kelowna or any of these sources, they should be paying. In terms of like you paying to show work, they're going to be dodgy places out there. We don't recommend paying in order to show your work somewhere, for sure. I'm trying to imagine an instance where that might make sense, and yeah, it definitely isn't a good idea.
Is there, is if you could touch on commercial galleries for a
Mhm.
second. So, does Carfac have any influence or jurisdiction with commercial galleries? So, a commercial gallery could charge you to, well, of course they take commission, right?
Well,
But
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that I guess would be a question. Yeah, clarifying first if it's a public or a
Mhm.
commercial gallery.
Yeah, the reason the exhibition rates don't apply to commercial galleries is they're already working to sell your work, and the idea is that you split the proceeds. So, um, yeah,
And and if you're
that's
doing
the
that,
main
you should
difference.
probably have a contract or something too, hey?
Yes.
Does Carfac offer support with contracts or anything, or is that something that's outside of the scope of services?
We do. We have a sample, well, a publication called Artist Contracts that's available for sale through Carfac, Ontario. And you can purchase the whole book, but you can also get individual contracts. So, and they're pretty reasonable. I think it's like $5 per contract for a member, $8 for non-members. You would
Hmm.
spend significantly more going to a lawyer to get something drafted specifically for you. You can also amend them for your purposes, but it's a good guideline to show like what kinds of things should be in a contract and what kind of terms are fair or not. Um, yeah.
Okay. And I guess the same question with insurance. Does Carfac have any supports around insurance or recommended insurance companies who deal with art, or is that recommendations around that as well?
We do. So I talked a little bit about like the health and dental insurance. That's
Hmm.
probably not what you mean. Like we do have that available though. Some of our provincial offices have an arrangement with a company called Assure Art, which does insure artworks as well as I believe studio and home insurance at a discounted rate for
Okay.
artists. Yeah.
I know
Mhm.
that is a question that we often get from exhibiting artists in our galleries or supporting
Mhm.
artists who are shipping their work somewhere, or the gallery doesn't necessarily have insurance for exhibiting works, and people have to provide their own insurance. Yeah, that's always a question that we get as well.
Mm. We have an advisory note as well for members about like tips about insuring your art too.
Okay,
But yeah, Assure Art, like I've talked to a lot of people who are really pretty happy with the service they offer.
great.
I can here what's their name? I don't have their website, but I'm sure you can find them pretty quickly.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
get it in there. Oh,
Yeah.
ASSURART. There we go. Yeah. Um, Also, just really a couple questions about blockchain.
Hmm.
Can
What
you,
is it?
what is it? I feel like I've heard about it in a few movies and maybe
Yeah.
like some like, yeah.
So it's interesting because a couple of organizations approached us about wanting to partner on it, and I had no idea what it was either. And I don't know about you. I'm sure this is true for you. You're visual people. You want to know what it's going to look like. Like you can hear, oh, it's blocks that are connected. Like, yeah, okay, but what does it actually look like? Ooh, I can. Well, I can share the. We have like um, a website that has been created. It hasn't been populated with artworks yet, but it can give you a little bit of information about what our project, which is called Imprimo, will be looking like. We are planning on we have a press release that'll be coming out probably in the next week or so about our next phase of it. But basically what it is as an artist, you can go to Imprimo, and I can't say for sure this is how other blockchain projects are going to work, but this is ours. So you would register, you can upload your works and all of its metadata. And so, you can have information about who made it, when it was made, the dimensions, the medium. You can even include information about like where it's been exhibited, where like a gallery that it's currently for sale through, or if it's in a public collection somewhere. It's basically like a CV for each and every one of your artworks, and they're linked under you. And it's kind of cool, really, because when I think about like artist CVs, it's just, you know, a document that says I've been in these shows, but now you can see which works were in each of those shows. You can see the life cycle of that art.
So it's really a different way of archiving your work?
Yeah. There's also a lot of potential for it in terms of like, when you add works, like you could have an installation shot of it in a show. You could have an image of like various stages of process that you may have been through in creating that work, if you want to document that through there. It could be useful in terms of authenticating work. I know there's a lot of people who are interested in terms of like reducing opportunities for art fraud, because blockchain is an open and publicly accessible platform, and so people would be able to see pretty easily if fake works are being posted on it. And we're at the stage now where we're inviting different museums and art galleries to do some testing with it and see if how they may want to get involved. So let's say as an artist, you want to put an artwork on the blockchain and you sold it through a gallery. They could verify that, yes, that did get sold through me, or that it was shown at the Alternator. You can say, yep, it was shown here. And that way, if there's any question about provenance, it's easier to verify. That's not to say that you have to do that at every single step. Like, I know that sounds like a lot of work to go through and do, but you know, it's more than we have now. So if anybody is interested in sort of tracking all of those details about their art and where it ends up, it could be a pretty good way to do that. And it could make work more discoverable potentially as well. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in it, both like with my artist hat on and with my Alternator hat on as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it is hard, just to track the individual work sometimes. And I kind of know where they are, and I have a little loose spreadsheet, a little Google spreadsheet, and you know, something else might be a bit more valuable to me, just to kind of have it out there a bit more publicly and trackable and traceable and discoverable. Yeah. So we've got another question here. The institute that talks about visual art copyright. So I think that was CAA. Can you talk a little bit about more about that? Revisit that a little bit.
Yep. So it's copyright visual arts, and their website is COVA-DAAV. I think it's .ca, probably .ca. Yeah. So it's a copyright collective that you can sign up with, and they would administer or license the use of your work. They're not going to go out and find shows for you. Like if I'm going to have a show at Alternator, I would have to get in touch with the collective to say, I'm having a show. Can you negotiate the license for me? And they would do that. And they would make sure that anything that they negotiate is, you know, what you want. They wouldn't like undercut you, kind of a thing. But typically, like the rates are above what Carfac even recommends in our fee schedule. And as I said, like, it's free to join, doesn't cost anything to the artist. So it's a pretty good service. And if we did get an artist resale right in Canada, we're hoping that they would be the ones that would administer it, just because it would, like, having that central body to track all of the sales and make sure the artists are paid and the auction houses and the galleries are invoiced they would manage all of that.
Could you talk a little bit about ARR? Is there are there other countries that already have that in place?
Yes, so we
And
think there are at least 93 of them around the world.
oh
So
wow.
as I mentioned, like all of the European Union, Australia got it in, I think it was 2009. Several countries in Africa and South America have it. I know less about it just because it's probably written in languages that I don't read Spanish, so I don't know as much about like
Right.
how it works in Ecuador, to be quite frank. But I do know that the World Intellectual Property Organization is regularly reviewing how it works in other countries. So, and I guess the benefit of having more than 90 countries around the world with having it, we're able to see the best practices of how it's been applied, like how it works well and how it maybe didn't work as well. So we can choose a model that we think it would be the best for Canada.
And like so would it be retroactive? Like, so for instance, if I sold a work in 2015, or is it kind of like when it comes in as of works being sold
So
from
it would,
whenever it comes into practice?
I mean, it's hard to say exactly, but
Right.
I imagine that, let's say it happened in 2022, there may be an implementation phase of like a year or something, or not. Who knows? Because like I said, you never can predict what governments are going to do. But let's say it's in place in 2022. It would affect any sales after that, probably. At least that's what we would recommend. We wouldn't recommend it be applied to previous sales, but it should apply to works that were made before 2022.
Right.
So,
right.
which is not how the exhibition right applies. I should say that, like, the exhibition right was legislated in 1988, and the government decided when they legislated it, they didn't know what kind of impact it would have on museums. So they said this only applies to works made after June 7th, 1988. So many art galleries do still pay for works that are made before that, because it's just kind of an arbitrary date. If someone's still living, especially, like, it seems kind of cruel to pay some people in a group exhibition and not others. Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And we are actually advocating that they just get rid of the 1988 thing and have it apply to the same terms as everything else in copyright.
Right.
No, that's a good question about like resell, about how it would work in terms of older, newer works.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. We have another question. How much should artists get for an artist talk? And does it differ depending on the size of the gallery?
Artist talks are a little bit different than, say, exhibition fees, which are determined by the budget. We do recommend just a flat fee. I should say that the rates that we recommend are recommended minimums. We always recommend that people pay above as much as they possibly can. So, you know, like, it doesn't really make sense if somebody has a $60 million budget to be paying the same as a gallery with a $50,000 budget. But currently, we don't distinguish for like artist talks. But I do think that a lot of the bigger galleries do pay more. Well, certainly the National Gallery does. And what were you asking? Oh, what would it be? I believe right now for a talk that's under 4 hours, the minimum would be $322. And for a talk
I couldn't imagine giving an artist talk over 4 hours. That would be a long talk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so we call them presentation fees. So like, if you were doing a full day workshop, then you would,
Okay.
it would be the full day rate.
Right.
But like, I often think about panels. People say, oh, that's a lot for like somebody's 10-minute presentation. And I say, well, it's a 10-minute presentation. That's probably part of a 2-hour panel. And it probably took them at least a day to plan what they were going to say.
And there's a lot of work and experience that goes into the work, and it's about acknowledging that as well. Yeah, the expertise that goes into someone's practice.
Absolutely.
Keep those questions coming. I know I still have some, so I'm very interested in UBI and And if you could talk a little bit about what that is and what Carfax kind of stance is and why UBI might be of interest to artists.
So we were approached by a small group of artists and arts workers to try to put together a case for UBI. And of course, we were like, yes, it makes total sense. Having said that, this group is part of a larger coalition. Carfac is not recommending that this only apply to artists. I mean, obviously, we want it to apply for artists, but we really do believe that anybody who needs it should be able to access it. And certainly the last year has shown with CERB that that it's possible and it's doable. So in terms of how it would work, well, I don't have the exact details on me at the moment. And I think some people are probably still figuring that out to a certain extent. But yeah, I mean, there's different models for it, right? Like, so one of them is that literally every Canadian would be paid a basic income, and then it would be progressively paid back through taxes by anybody who doesn't actually need it or has an income up above a certain level. So that's one way to do it. Others are to do it through things that are very similar to like healthcare or child benefits or old age security, that kind of a thing. I think there's one or two other models that have been floated as well, but yeah, I know like with CERB, like that has been available to anybody who needed it in the last year, and it's been really interesting for me because I've actually received a lot less, not a lot less, but it feels like a lot less phone calls and emails from artists over the last year, and I do wonder if it's to a certain extent because people are getting paid every other week, and that's not a thing that normally happens. And so, you know, the insecurity that comes with not knowing, not having a predictable income stream has been eased to a certain extent for a lot of people. So I think it really does show the usefulness of something like a UBI. And I think it'd be really great to see how this last year, scary as it's been in all kinds of ways, but like financially, like, well, I mean, it's hard to say because a lot of people are quite worried about when, you know, venues are going to open again and all of that kind of thing. But within the visual arts, certainly how having a lifeline like that has impacted, you know, finances, mental health, the ability to create new works. Yeah, lots of different things.
Yeah, we did a session a few weeks ago that was about art-life balance, and we sold out, so we did it 2 nights, but in a row. But it's something that's really top of mind for artists, is kind of that idea of like, how do you maintain a practice when you're worried about money and you can't make art, and then just kind of those regular struggles of artists are amplified these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, you know, we take it for granted, but like we have healthcare, and in the US, they don't. And so it'd be really interesting to see how not having that incredible burden on us, like wondering like if you can see a doctor or have a surgery or any of that, like how that has made quality of life for Canadians significantly better. I mean, there's a lot of things that make our quality of life significantly better, I think, but something like this, I think, could make a huge difference for a lot of people.
Yeah. I have another question that's come in around pricing of works again. So I'm just going to read this. I've noticed that size and amount of paint apparently matters more than the originality of ideas. For example, some artists are going bigger and bigger, same style, and often mechanically converting their skills to canvas to have good sales. Is there any value for the originality of ideas and how it is priced? That's a big question.
It is. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to set your prices, and setting prices, and whether people are buying is sometimes not always, there's two different things to a certain degree too. But I guess I would say, like, Carfax Ontario has a section on their website, on like top 12 tips for price setting, and I'm just quickly looking, like, and their first top tip is like, there's no recipe.
Yeah. I know
But
last night or last week we did a little panel about selling your artwork, and a couple of the artists did talk about pricing their work by the square foot and
mhm,
stuff, especially doing like murals and stuff like that. And
yeah,
that square footage amount has kind of changed as they've progressed in their practice from emerging to established artists and stuff,
mhm,
from in the tens to in the hundreds
mhm,
of dollars per square foot.
right,
But
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's certainly a factor, but I mean, there's also like figuring out what your costs are, figuring out what everybody else charges for a similar kind of style or genre or medium, to and career level as well, is certainly something. Um, Knowing, like, really what the market is likely to demand for your work. So again, I would say, looking at how you compare to others of like a similar region, similar style, any of those things might be useful to determine. Um, uh, yeah.
But there's no recipe. There's no one
There,
recipe.
there isn't, but I really do. So here, I'm gonna just pop this in. This is helpful, I think. And I mean, it's on Carfax Ontario's website, but it was developed by the uh, Cultural Careers Council of Ontario. And I think it's got some useful advice
Great.
in it. Hmm.
Yeah.
I would
And it's
also, I mean, talking to a dealer, I would imagine would be an easy, well, like a useful thing to do in terms of establishing like prices, for your work for sure, and what they think,
mhm.
or where you might have the best abilities to market. Hmm.
Yeah, and it is very different for different disciplines as well too. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's always the trickiest question. It's the most popular question I think that we get from new and emerging artists joining the gallery, or people who are just kind of exploring art. And it's the hardest one to answer. But
Hmm.
speaking of questions, so if people have questions for Carfax, do they need to be a member um, to ask or to reach out to Carfax?
No, but I mean, there is certain information that is only available to members, and um, I mean, if somebody has a question that requires an enormous amount of research, there's probably a limit to what we're able to do for somebody who isn't a member versus someone who is. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I get questions all the time. Um,
And how much is membership?
it varies across the country, but in BC, sorry, I don't think about these things very often just
Sorry,
because.
I'm like putting you on the spot.
Well, I mean, membership, so when you join Carfax, you typically do it through your provincial, or regional office, and so it doesn't happen through me. But
Okay.
membership, through the province as well as, through national, and so it's, you get services from both ends. And so a vote, like a regular artist membership in BC is $60. It's $100 for a household of artists, $40 for seniors, 30 for students. And then we also have, membership rates for associates, and like, somebody who's just interested but not an artist, like a curator, for example, might join.
Mhm.
Associations, galleries do sometimes join, for example, and then there's corporate memberships. So there's a range, in terms of the rates. Yeah.
Great. Um, does Carfax support artists who are outside of Canada at all? And I don't know how relevant this is as of a question right now, because I think most artists are sticking close to home these days.
Yeah.
But can you support artists who are maybe Canadian but working in other countries, or yeah, what does that relationship look like?
So we do have relationships with organizations that are like us in other countries. So often if a Canadian artist is thinking about working abroad and they want to know how things are in like Germany, then I'll put them in touch with the association there. If somebody in Canada has an issue with a gallery in another country, we might be able to help, or at least direct people on like where to get assistance with that. Often it will be in that other country. So again, we might contact that association in the other country. What else? We do have some members that do live abroad because they were Canadian and then they're living elsewhere, and they just keep their membership. Not a lot of them, but some. I was 1 year I worked abroad for a little while. I was living in the UK for 5 or 6 months, I think, 10, 11 years ago now. Wow, that seems like it was just yesterday. And so I found an association that does what we do over there. There were a few different people. So I did my job while I was over there, but I also worked with them and learned how they do things as well. And so one of the groups over there had this thing called, I think it's Art Route, maybe. Oh, I can't remember the exact name of it, but what they asked me to do was to provide information about how things work in Canada for British artists. Like they don't know what an artist run center is because it's not something that exists. It's a very Canadian term. They probably do have something similar, but it's not like that. Or there are people who move here who are like they don't have public funding available. So learning about grants and all of that. And so they also have similar resources from other countries. I'll see if I can, I don't know if they still have it available, but like we can connect people who are interested. If it doesn't happen very often that people contact us about that, but
Right.
I should also say, like I think I mentioned earlier, when people travel abroad, we do have this thing called the International Association of Art Card. And so we sell those to members, and they're like it's a $10 card, and it gets you into museums all over Europe for free, and it's saved me a lot of money every time that I've ever gone. It also often gets you through the quick line, like it gets you through the quick line through the Louvre like that. It's brilliant.
That's worth its price right there.
It totally is. We also have these things called certificates of Canadian origin. So if your work is being shown outside of the country and you intend for it to come back, we can process these certificates for you to avoid hassles with paying taxes when it returns back to Canada, because it's proof that this work is Canadian. So you don't have to deal with a lot of those things. You still may need a customs broker, but it's a useful document to show the origin of your work, that you didn't buy it in France and try to sneak it in, that kind of a thing.
Right. We do have another question that's come in. Does Carfac evaluate the works and help folks with figuring out how much they should write for insurance in their applications? And I'm not sure if you guys do that yourselves, or if there's people. No, that's something people would have to look out. It's not a service that you provide.
Well, I mean, insurance brokers might be the best people to do that anyway, I would imagine, or an appraiser.
Appraiser.
Yeah.
Art appraiser. Another question here quickly. Do you need to use the certificate of origin if you're selling and shipping work to a collector in the United States?
No, because if you're selling it and it's going to remain in the US, then it's not coming back to Canada. But we do have some information on like tips for selling and exhibiting outside the country. So we've got advisory notes on that as well. But no, the certificates don't work if you're selling. And we know that sometimes works are available for sale when you send it outside of the country, and maybe it doesn't sell, so it comes back. And in that case, you can still get a certificate.
And does Carfac have a list of appraisers, or is that something that's not
I don't
no.
get asked that very often, so no, I don't actually. I mean, I'm sure like our friends Google probably have a good list of art appraisers. If not, like a lot of dealers also do art appraisals, so that might be helpful. Asking who
Yeah.
they use. Mhm.
Yeah. Are there any last questions? Or I have a few more still. Or I'd also, if someone wanted to become a member, would they do that through their own provincial organization?
Yeah, yeah. So Carfax
M-
BC.
Carfax BC, Linda, if you're there, maybe you can just
Oh yeah.
provide a little hello from Carfax BC. Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, there's Linda. Hi. Do you want to say hello? Do a quick introduction, Linda. Oh, but you have to unmute yourself. Sorry.
It's okay. Not sure what I should tell you. We're working towards getting things a little bit better functioning. We've been without a staff person, but she's now started so that newsletters will go out. That newsletter, I've shared an older copy with artists, and that alone to me is worth membership. Because that newsletter gives you ideas of where you can show calls to artists, or if you need a job that is art oriented,
Mm.
there's always jobs and calls. There will be other information like our last newsletter that went out a couple of days ago, sometime Tuesday, had the CERB announcement in rough form. The next newsletter will have the link to the website, the national website. And I also posted those on our Facebook page and our Twitter page.
Mhm.
The few posts I've put on our Facebook page has increased our viewer numbers considerably, and I was quite surprised. But for whatever reasons, copyright being the issue, Facebook has a lot of art sites that I happen to have joined, and I guess there's some sort of connection that they find me. So when I'm posting there, they find that, and then they join the site.
Thanks. And if people want to become members in BC, they would do so at they would go to the Carfax BC website.
That's right.
Yeah.
We have a PayPal page, or you can that you fill in and pay with a credit card, or you can e-transfer to us at bc@carfac.ca. And we'll get the e-transfer, and it's an automatic deposit, and then you get added on to our membership list that, and then you get whatever we've got going out. Okay. We do have an Instagram page too. I forgot that. We did have, for a short term before we lost our staff, some publicity for artists, and we're on the Instagram page. And I thought, we should have a look at that to make sure it fits our purposes, and then start it again in some function. The issue being Instagram is owned by Facebook, and there's a copyright issue there.
Mm.
And we need to figure a way to provide something for our artists with a bit of advertising on maybe on the small scale, but it can be still good for them and not costly because it's membership.
A bit of profile. Thank you,
Yes.
Linda. I appreciate thank you for letting me put you on the spot there.
No problem.
We are just about out of time here, but I just wanted to say a really quick thank you to you, April. I really appreciate you taking the time and answering everyone's questions.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, it was a real treat to get a chance to learn more. I really appreciated the blockchain information. It's something that I've definitely been curious about, and just learning more about all the services and the things that you have coming up as well. Yeah, if anyone has any follow-up questions, how can should they just contact Carfac National or Carfac BC?
Either, I suppose. I mean, I've just put my email there, so if you have any questions for me, I'm more than happy to help. Yeah.
Great.
And I mean, I would also recommend check out our Facebook, like Carfax National Facebook, our website. We have a lot of information about what we do, and like we also on social media we regularly share articles that are of interest to artists that way too. So yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you
always
so
nice
much.
to meet with people.
Yeah.
Meet. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, right? Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, and thank you everyone for joining us. And just closing out, next week's Alternator chat is actually it's an artist talk with Eileen Bayamapour, who is exhibiting in the Alternator's main gallery right now. She does have, as part of her exhibition, Wasting Techniques, a spitting machine in the gallery that goes off every day at noon. And you can go onto our website, and there's a couple of Zoom links that are live and streaming throughout gallery hours where you can check out the exhibition. So thanks everyone for coming, and have a good rest of your evening. Stay warm. I know it's cold everywhere right now, so great. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.